All right, welcome back to 869 Forward. And now we're actually in our second and last interview segment with the Honorable Shawn Richards, Deputy Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Minister, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Amri, and thank you for having me here this evening. Good evening, Ms. Devent. How are you?
I'm okay. Shawn, welcome to 869 Forward. I actually feel like I have an advantage here because, Shawn and I share a birthday.
Yes,
so I
we
feel
do.
like we have so much in common.
The best and the best month.
Wow.
Yes, sir. No need to be jealous.
Wow.
And then to add to that, Hub City and your ministry and your constituency kind of took over tonight. So we had the youth presenting, and then we had members from your constituency, Hub City, Shawn City, Sandy Point City, the first city, representing here tonight. How do you feel about that?
I feel very good about it, and they're actually still here listening very intently. Hello, hello, hello. Good evening to everyone. SP? No gimmicks? Next election? Thank you. Mr. Amri, you wish to say something?
We might as well welcome constituency to the 869 Forward. So welcome, you guys.
Welcome, constituency
welcome.
number 5.
Welcome, constituency number 5.
Are they all here, the entire community?
No, on election night, you will get a better idea as to how many persons we have in Sandy
In Sandy
Point.
Point, okay, no problem.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking forward to that. So let's jump straight into it because we don't want to waste any more of your time.
No comments.
First question. First question. For those of, folks who are listening and watching, tell us a bit about Shawn Richards, not the Honorable Shawn Richards, but Shawn Richards before he became the Honorable Shawn Richards. Your childhood growing up, I'm assuming you grew up in Sandy Point?
Yes, I did grow up in the beautiful and proud town of Sandy Point. Mm-hmm. I attended the Sandy Point Primary School and also the Sandy Point High School. Education has always been important to me, and as such, I think I did well in both primary and high school. I should add that my mom was a teacher, career teacher, and my father a postman. Hence, she, of course, would have insisted in terms of the very best for her children and getting an education, and of course, supported by my father. However, growing up in Sandy Point perhaps has been the best experience for me. Upon graduating from high school, I would have migrated to St. Thomas. And upon graduating from the University of the Virgin Islands, I immediately returned to St. Kitts. I did such because I felt that St. Kitts, and in particular Sandy Point, it has been credited for giving me the education, for giving me the foundation that I had, and it was necessary for me to, of course, give back to my hometown and to give back to the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. As a matter of fact, when I returned, I was unemployed for quite some time and decided to take up teaching at the Sandy Point High School on a voluntary basis. And so for several weeks, I actually taught at the Sandy Point High School without being paid, but I saw it as giving back to the community, giving back in particular to the students of the Sandy Point High School back then.
Shawn, you are the first interview guest we had to have an audience applauding for you.
His own audience. All right,
Sounds like you're jealous.
This man gives me attitude every single time I talk to him.
Shawn City, Hub City, he can't help it.
I'm telling you. You people are here today, so I won't argue with you.
Well, speaking of education, I don't know if you remember, but you didn't mention it, but you did have an after-school program which I actually benefited from. I remember you were my POB teacher, and well, I did very well for examinations, so he's a pretty good teacher at that. So can you tell us more about your career and what led you into service of the people?
You have a very good memory. And indeed, yes, I would have undertaken some evening classes, and you were one of the students who participated. A very intelligent student, as a matter of fact, and perhaps it's also credited to the date of birth.
Saji. December babies are special people. We're special.
Very much so. However,
I
yes, upon graduation from the University of the Virgin Islands, as I said, I would have taught voluntarily for a period of time. I then found employment with the government of St. Kitts and Nevis back then in the audit office. And that would have been the period 1994 up until I think it was 1996. To be honest, when I returned to the Federation, I had said to myself then that it would be a one-year stint, and then I would return to school perhaps to study law. However, I spent about 2 years working before I eventually made that move. And perhaps that is also one of the reasons why I decided to enter politics. There was a change in government in 1995, and I recalled that when I took up employment at the Government Audit Office, I was told within a year or two I would be appointed. There was a change of government, and I began getting messages from certain ministers saying to me why I didn't let the former representative or the then representative for Sandy Point appoint me, and that I would not be appointed under that government. I said then that I don't have to take this, and so I decided to resign. I returned to graduate school, didn't pursue law, but decided to pursue a master's in accounting and financial information systems. As I said earlier, I went to the University of the Virgin Islands straight out of high school. And so there was a part of me that felt that I was spending my entire life pursuing education. So I asked myself, do I really want to go back to law school and do the next 4 to 5 years? And I didn't feel like it. So I asked myself again, what else can I do so that at the end of the day, I can end up with a professional designation? So if I so desire to work for myself, I can do so. I began reflecting on the fact that I had worked at the Government Audit Office. Before I began graduate school, when I returned to St. Thomas, I did some accounting jobs, and so I decided to do the Master's in Accounting and Financial Information Systems. And after that, I can do the Certified Public Accountant exam and thereby end up with a professional designation, hence that particular career path. So I completed the Master's, again returned to St. Kitts, worked at TDC for quite a number of years. I actually spent about 14 years working at TDC. Okay. But when I began at TDC, I was in the accounts office for TDC Airlines and TDC Tours. Then eventually worked in the audit office at TDC. While at the audit office, I took study leave, returned to Ohio, where I had done my master's degree in Columbus this time, because the master's was done at Cleveland State University, and began preparations to undertake the Certified Public Accountant exam, so that in 2004, I think it was, or no, it could have been 2002, because I think the election was in 2004, did the Certified Public Accountant exam, was successful at that, and then in 2004 contested my first election. You would note that I said I felt victimized over not being appointed, and that was one of the driving reasons for entering politics. As a young man, I said I need to make a difference, because no longer should young persons be victimized based on the political party that they support. I took the plunge into politics. I was successful at it at the very first opportunity. Wow. And I try my best as possible to give all young persons an opportunity, regardless of which political party they support.
Brilliant. Excellent. Wonderful story. So you are now the leader of the People's Action Movement, and we're assuming that you've been a part of the party, involved in the party for quite some time. Tell us about that phone call, that message, that conversation with whomever you had it with, who convinced you, listen, join our team, put your name forward, represent the people. When you were called to serve, tell us about that moment.
I don't think it was a phone call from anyone, actually. When I returned to St. Kitts at the end of December, I think it was in 1993, it was the time when you had quite a bit of turmoil because of the 4-4 situation, the riots, etc.
Yes.
I can actually recall attending the first meeting of the parliament and wondering if I was ever going to leave parliament that morning because of all the bottles and stones which were being thrown on the outside. The representative then actually is a cousin of mine, Hugh Heiliger, and I was very much involved in his re-election campaign leading up to the general election of 1995. I served as his campaign manager. It is something that I enjoyed very much. He would have contested again in 2000, and that is when he lost the seat. So my appetite had already been whet, and in 2004 it was almost a natural progression into politics. I decided I was going to contest the seat. There are a number of persons who were interested back then, and we all competed to become the representative, the candidate. Eventually, I was chosen as the candidate, and I have been successful ever since then. I don't credit the success to myself, but I credit the success to all of the good people of Sandy Point.
Thank you. Thank you again, constituency number 5. So, Shawn, you are here. The people have elected you. Tell us about some of those things you've done for constituency number 5. I remember while they were here, they kept saying, we can't change, we're not changing. Sandy Point, Sandy Point is how it is. We like it how it is. But I want to hear more. What are the plans you have for Sandy Point?
There are many plans that I have for Sandy Point, but I think prior to you ask, what have I done for the people of Sandy Point? And there are a number of projects which have been done in Sandy Point, all with different meanings to different persons. For example, the child attending the Sandy Point Primary School, of course, would be happy for the fact that we have done upgrades to that institution, be it the computer lab, be it the issue that they face with the bathrooms down there year after year, which hadn't been addressed by the former administration. So for that child or that student, of course, that would be significant to that individual. For those who have been assisted with the building of a home, that would be significant to those persons. For the police officers who have had to endure living in rented facilities affected by mold, inadequate spacing, etc., the building of a brand new police station would be significant for those persons. For individuals living in areas where you have had unpaved roads even longer than I have had the opportunity to live, of course, those would be of great significance to those individuals. To those who have been assisted with employment, that is significant for them. For the athletes from Sandy Point High, for example, who over the years have won the inter-high school championship year after year, unlike those who attended Washington Archibald High School, Bastia High School. Which school you attended,
Amali,
Mr. Amri?
Amali, you ready to comment?
I went to Bastia High School.
Okay, so unlike those who attended Bastia High School, but not given the opportunity to be able to have lights on the play field, that would be a significant accomplishment for those persons. For the young tennis players such as Ralsei, trying to keep in shape, of course, that is significant to her. So as I reflect on the different projects, and there are many more, they all hold great significance to different individuals depending on their station in life. Going forward, what it is we intend to achieve in Sandy Point. Of course, we want to attract more business places to Sandy Point to give more Sandy Pointers the opportunity for development. When Mr. Herbert gave his own reflections tonight as to why we like it like this, he would have said that one of the intentions is to build a brand new preschool in Sandy Point. Of course, there are also a number of Sandy Pointers who still have an interest in having their own home, and that is one of the priorities going into the next term. We have spoken about a bypass road for Sandy Point that I do hope to achieve. Pump Bay is of special significance to a number of persons, and we're hoping to develop Pump Bay into a strip sort of nightlife activity. Lovely. You have some persons already operating businesses there, and so we're hoping that other persons will be given similar opportunities to be able to ply their trade at Pump Bay. The Sandy Point High School has already been earmarked for some physical work there, in particular to ensure that our young persons are able to partake in technical vocational education related subjects. The Island Main Road, as you are aware, is currently being resurfaced, and that project should be coming to Sandy Point very shortly. We already have a number of sidewalks being built. We're hoping to have a technical vocational center in Sandy Point for those individuals who have already graduated from high school but would like to be able to do technical subjects. Indeed, there is quite a bit in store for Sandy Point. We were a town, and of course we intend to take our rightful place in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis as a town that we are all very proud of.
Wonderful. You mentioned, well, you attacked my former school.
I
Certainly,
did not attack your school, so.
Certainly, you did.
Were you an athlete?
Were
you an athlete?
You and Rohanda
Were you an athlete?
threw shade at my school, so I'm going to talk about my school a little bit, the Bastia High School.
The Bastia High School.
You know, you have plans, and the government announced plans to build a new Bastia High School. How is that going, first of all? People are very excited about it. The students are very eager to, you know, relocate back into their brand new school. Tell us how that is going, and also if you could touch on a few of the features of the school, because from what I understand, it's going to be state-of-the-art, it's going to be quite modern, it's going to be quite user-friendly, student-friendly. So if you could just touch on the project, you know, where it's at, when do you think it will be completed? And number two, some of the features of the infrastructure of the new Bastia High School.
Okay. Before I answer the question, let me make it abundantly clear that I am supportive of all of the schools in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, especially in my capacity as the Minister of Education. Of course, I attended Sandy Point High School, and so it holds special significance for me.
How sweet.
Mr. Amri, are you going to allow me to answer the question?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. The Bastia High School is a project that we promised during our first term in government. I must indicate that I am disappointed over the fact that we haven't been able to complete it during the first term. However, I also add that the Bastia High School project is one that will be completed in the second term. It has been quite a learning experience in terms of the operations of government relative to that one project. When we began looking at a site for the Bastia High School, we had, I think it was 5 sites which were identified. Some of the sites were not deemed suitable for different reasons. For example, some sites were too small to be able to hold a school of the magnitude of Bastia High School. The committee narrowed it down to 2 sites. When we recognized the 2 sites, which the committee had a preference for, it was of course noted that one of the sites would be where we have the aquifer. The government then put a next committee in place to give recommendations as to whether or not a school can be built at that site. The committee came back with its recommendations that yes, indeed, a school can be built there. However, subsequent to that, we also needed to do an environmental impact assessment. That was completed. We needed to do designs for the building. That took quite a bit of time. When the architect came back with the designs, we had to look at it and ensure that it is fit for a purpose. We also had letters from the opposition asking about whether or not the school is still deemed an emergency project, and why would it still be deemed an emergency project? Because the original intention was to have a build and design by the very same contractor. We then took a decision to put the school out to tender, and that also has taken some time. It was last week we signed the first contract in terms of the construction management contract for the Bastia High School. That is now in place. And coming out of that, we now expect the tenders for the actual construction of the school to begin very shortly. So I think I can safely say that in terms of construction of the school, we are quite close to starting that phase of the project.
Wonderful.
Now, it is not, though, that we have left the students without adequate space in the interim. One of the first things that we did was to provide temporary classroom facilities for the students. Those classrooms were built in a matter of months. The students of the Bastia High School have been doing quite well compared to all of the other schools in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, so they haven't been shortchanged in terms of their education. The results coming from CXC, for example, for students from the Bastia High School, are just as good as the results coming from any other school here in St. Kitts and also in Nevis.
Wonderful. Very happy to hear that. One last question before we close you out of time. You're coming up against a particular gentleman in number 5 in the election. So why don't you tell the listeners and the Sandy Pointers that are actually watching the viewing right now, why Shawn Richards? What separates you from your opponent, and why should they put an X by the hat come next week Friday?
Shawn Richards has performed on behalf of all of the people of Sandy Point. There is absolutely no comparison between the opponent and myself. The Labour Party over the years has demonstrated that it doesn't like the people of Sandy Point. The people of Sandy Point have been victimized year after year by the former Labour administration. I just pointed out to you many of the projects which we have been able to accomplish in Sandy Point. Those projects would indicate to you that Sandy Point has been neglected. The playfield that I spoke about, for example, it was opened, I think, back in the late 1980s, and not even one single lamp post with one single bulb or even a candle was placed on that playfield to provide any sort of lighting for the users of the playfield. As a matter of fact, when I placed lights on that playfield, they said that I took the lights which were designated for the football stadium in Warner Park and placed them in Sandy Point. I've said it since then, and I repeat it tonight, I make absolutely no apologies for doing so. I spoke about the police station, again, a case of neglect, in light of the fact that crime was sky high under the former administration. That administration did absolutely nothing to ensure that the crime rate decreased. Absolutely nothing in terms of providing police with the necessary resources. The then Prime Minister said that it's like water running off the back of a duck. The police were not given adequate facilities from which to operate from. When the premises were being rented, you had a magistrate court located there. The room which was housing the magistrate court became infested with mold, and the magistrate court had to be moved to Idiakbe.
Yeah.
The fire officers were not provided with adequate facilities, and a next building was rented on the outskirts of Sandy Point in New Guinea to provide space for the police officers. A commitment was given that a brand new police station will be built, and indeed a brand new police station is now being built for the people of Sandy Point. I can recall parliament after parliament, budget debate after budget debate, speaking to some of the road conditions in Sandy Point. Again, absolutely nothing was done. You speak to a number of Sandy Pointers and they would say to you that even in terms of their jobs, they were victimized by the former administration. That has come to an end. All Sandy Pointers, regardless of which political party they support, have been provided with opportunities for employment within the public sector. Quite clearly, I have performed on behalf of all of the people of Sandy Point. I spoke to you about the primary school, the septic issue that was faced there by the most vulnerable, our children, year after year, and again, absolutely nothing done. Sandy Pointers have seen the difference. They have seen a performance. We are intelligent persons, and as intelligent persons, we will vote for performance. And so the people of Sandy Point will vote for Shawn Richards to continue the performance in Sandy Point to ensure that we have a stronger and safer future in Sandy Point.
All right, folks, there you have it. The Honorable Shawn Richards.
Window, through my window, I see my chick. Nobody cares how we make it through the day.